Chapter 4, Lesson 2, on simplifying algebraic expressions. Okay, we have some definitions we need to get down. So a term is a combination of any numbers and variables being multiplied together, and they're always separated by a plus or a minus sign. Now, it doesn't have to have numbers and variables, but it can. Okay, an example of a term might be 3x. An example of a term might also be negative 2x squared y. An example of a term could also be 10. Okay? An example in an expression would be if I have 2x minus 8y plus 5x squared minus 2. There are 4 terms here, and each term is separated by a plus or a minus sign. So my first term is 2x. My second term is negative 8y. My third term is 5x squared. And my fourth term is negative 2. You notice that the plus and minus signs stay with the following term. So we refer to those terms as positive or negative depending on if they have a plus or a minus before them. Our next word we're going to look at is a coefficient. And a coefficient is any number that comes before a variable part. And if there's no number there, then my coefficient is a 1. So for example, if I have the term 5x, then my coefficient is 5. That's my coefficient. If I have x squared y is my term, then my coefficient is a 1 because there is a invisible 1 before there. I can multiply anything by 1. Now an example in an expression would be if I have 3x minus 10x squared plus 20. Right? I look at my different terms. I have 3 terms here. I have a term of 3x. I have a second term of negative 10x squared, and I have a third term of 20. Now only 2 of those terms have a coefficient, because remember a coefficient is any number before a variable. So if there's no variable, there's not going to be a coefficient. So my coefficients in this expression would be 3 and negative 10. 20 is not a coefficient because it doesn't come before a variable. Which leads us to our next term, which is a constant. A constant is any term without a variable part. So it's basically just a number alone. So it's pretty easy to come up with an example of a constant because it's just a number. A constant could be 5 or negative 2. Now for an example in an expression, if I have 3x minus 10 plus 8y plus 5, then I have 4 terms, but my 2 constants in there are the negative 10 and the 5. Our last vocabulary is like terms. Like terms are 2 or more terms with the exact same variable part. And we also want to remember that we can combine them. When I see like terms, I can combine my like terms, and we'll look at what that means. Like terms, an example would be 3x and negative 8x. And if I combine them, I'm going to add their coefficients. So 3 plus negative 8 is negative 5, and I keep the same variable part. Okay, I might also have negative 3x squared y and 12x squared y. They are like terms. I can combine them together, and I can get 9x squared y. Now let's look at what happens in an expression. Let's say I have 3x minus 10 plus 14x plus 8. Alright, so I look for like terms and I say, oh, the 3x and the 14x are like terms, but also my 2 constants are like terms. So the negative 8, 10, and the 8 are also like terms. Now if I did combine them, I would get here a 17x, and here I would get negative 2. Now, let's look at an example of how I can recognize all of those different vocabulary terms in an expression. Why don't you pause the video right now and see if you can label what are the terms, what are the coefficients, the constants, and the like terms. Okay, let's see how you did. So when we look at this expression, we see that we have 4 terms. My first term is 5n, my second term is 2, my second term is negative n, and my last term is negative 6. Now you'll notice that I didn't just write a big list with the plus and minuses between them. I put commas to separate each term and just noted if they were positive or negative. All right, now I'm going to look for my coefficients. Remember, coefficients only happen if there is a variable. So this term right here has a coefficient. It is 5. The second term does not have a coefficient. It's just a 2. The next term, negative n, has a coefficient. There's no number there, but remember there's a 1, and so I put a negative 1. And then my last term, negative 6, does not have a variable, so there's no coefficient, which means that those two are my constants, 2 and negative 6. And then my like terms are 5n and negative n, but don't forget that constants are also like terms, so I also have 2 and negative 6 that are another pair of like terms. Now, what do we do with these? We use this to simplify algebraic expressions. And when we simplify, we have 2 rules that we follow. First thing we do is get rid of any parentheses. And how do we get rid of parentheses? We distribute. So we use our distributive property, and we get rid of those parentheses. And then we combine our like terms. So let's look at an example. All right, I see some parentheses. So my first thing I'm going to do if I need to simplify is get rid of those parentheses. Now, I'm not just distributing a 3. I'm distributing a negative 3. So I'm going to copy my 6y, and then I'm going to distribute negative 3 to the x is negative 3x, and negative 3 to the negative 2y is a positive 6y. Now I'm going to look for any like terms. I see a 6y and another positive 6y, which gives me 12y minus 3x. I cannot do anything further than that because they are not like terms. Okay, don't forget to do the try these problems on your notes.